Alexandra. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to hang out.
Yes. Well, we're talking about some really good things today, talking about self massage, back pain, other areas that could benefit. But before we get into that, could you start just by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I refer to myself as a body nerd because I'm a huge nerd, and it just so happens to be about anatomy and the body. And I feel like many people who are into fitness and wellness kind of things, I was really active as a kid. I went to university to get my degree in exercise biology, thinking that I would follow athletic training, which then I realized was only fun on someone else's worst day. And so I was like, karmically, that doesn't feel so great. And so then I started teaching yoga and movement after graduating from college, and I ended up at a yoga therapy conference. And at this conference, I met a woman, Jill Miller, who has a company called Tune Up Fitness, and they were doing this morning session. So it was, when you go to conferences and you like jam pack your day and you're like 7 a.m., like that's fine. And it's like day two and you're exhausted. But she was teaching us how to roll in therapy balls. And I got therapy balls. They're about the size of a tennis ball, but instead of being hollow, it's solid underneath my upper back into my upper trapezius. This exact spot where you're like, man, I would love if somebody could massage that for me at the end of every day. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh, this is so much. And not like, I can't say that it felt good. It didn't feel good. But I knew that it was something that I wanted to learn more about and to explore more and just to like feel that more. It's almost like a hurt so good. And you know that there's going to be less of that on the other side of it. So I started teaching for them. I got into teaching anatomy and therapy ball and self-massage courses to other movement professionals. And then thank goodness for the internet, which brought you and I together
Yep.
and also has allowed me to connect with so many people around the world to just help people learn how to move better, how to feel better, but most importantly, how to kind of I don't think like demystify is the best word, but how to make your body and the sensations that come up a little less scary. Because I think when it comes to pain, it is scary. Oh my gosh. And then you go on the internet and you Google it. And then you're like, 2 clicks down and you need surgery and like a new shoulder. And you're like, ah. And so it can be really overwhelming. So I love to teach people about anatomy and self massage and movement and just the ways in which we can maintain our bodies through just a few minutes a day. So really, it's like my own curiosity and my own injuries have led me to this point of, I hurt both of my shoulders. Well, how do I make sure that this never happens again? And that exploration, and then using what I've learned in my own body with my clients and helping them to help themselves. And it's just as kind of snowballed from there.
I love how you said that you want to make it a little bit less scary because that is a good point. When we feel pain, we don't understand where it's coming from or why we're having it. And so,
Hmm.
you got to love Dr. Google. You always find the worst there. So
Yes.
I've done it too. And, you can go
Yeah,
down that rabbit hole of
same.
like, okay, this is scary. But so often it's just things that we can do every day that you're saying, like have resolutions if we just know what to do. But most of us in different, fashions don't know what to do whenever we're having that pain. So we rely on other people basically to tell us,
Hmm.
to help us, to tell us what it is, or to even get the massage. And that's why I think it's interesting that we're talking about self massage, because I think that I know for me, like, it's like my muscles will start to get tight. I had years of back pain where I just couldn't get it. I tried massage. I even tried physical therapy. I was trying all these different modalities and it just still wasn't helping. But I needed, maybe if you can do something every day that you can do on your own, because it's like you just when you're getting to that, like, oh, my once a month when I can get to the massage or,
Hmm.
it's not enough sometimes for people.
Yeah. Well, think of it too like your teeth and dental health, right? We brush and hopefully floss every day, twice a day, and you don't even think about it. It's, 2 minutes, no big deal, move on with my day. But also, like, you can feel when you've missed it. Like there's some mornings where I'm like, oh my gosh, I like forgot to brush my teeth. And then all day long, I'm like, Also, I work from home. I have no excuse, but like, whatever. Okay. Like it happens. The same thing with your body. If you are only, even if you're going every week to get a massage, all of the like buildup of tension from working at a computer, running around after kids, melting into your couch at the end of the day, whatever it might be, like that stuff builds up. And so you go get your massage, they're working on the same thing they worked on before, and you're just doing the same thing over again and then kind of like resetting it, so to speak. And so by spending a few minutes in your day, I mean, honestly, before we hopped on the call, I was laying on my floor, rolling out my hips. Before this, it doesn't have to be a ton, just a little bit. And that helps you then when you go see your chiropractor, your physical therapist, your massage therapist, whatever, you've already done some of the work. So they don't have to undo that. And then also you can have a better conversation with them. So like you said, we want people to fix us because we don't understand. And it's a totally different conversation when you go to any of those healthcare providers and you're like, hey, I've tried this, and this is what I found. What do you think? Instead of, can you fix me? And relying on them completely to do it because they're only with you for 1 hour a week, even 2 hours a week. What about all of the other days of the week that you're running around and moving? Like that's what really makes a difference.
Absolutely. So let's start with, because I would say back pain is probably the most common. Everybody, back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain. We live in a world where we're sitting at desks all the time. And to compound that, now we're looking at down at phones all the time, which really doesn't create the posture that we need. So we often have back pain. So where would you start to incorporate it in?
The telephone. Right? I mean, that's the thing. Like, there is no universe in which I don't stand at a computer or work from a computer all day. So it's not like you can just like, well, stop doing that.
Yes.
For those of your audience who are active people, if you're like, oh, running hurts, well, just stop running. And you're like, I don't want to do that. But like with work stuff, like I can't stop using a computer. Like that's not a possibility. So where to actually start? Honestly, it's like the most boring, I'll say. I mean, I think it's fascinating, but I know for other people it's not as interesting, but is in looking at how you are standing and moving and holding yourself throughout the rest of your day. So especially with posture and the lower back, a common, it can go a couple of ways, right? I'm hypermobile, meaning my joints are extra flexible. So a common standing position for me is I lock my knees out and then my hips just kind of dump forward and it puts my lower back into a little bit of a deeper arch. But it also then sets you up where your muscles aren't able to support you in the way that is most efficient because one side is like overstretched trying to hold on to everything and the other side is like kind of compressed and just being like, I mean, obviously that's a gross oversimplification. So if you can get yourself stacked in your best posture, and awareness is the biggest piece of that, of like, what does good posture even feel like? So one of my favorite ways to do it is actually against a wall or even in a doorway. So you just lean into the doorway so that the back of your head, the back of your rib cage, and your sacrum, so that's the bone above your tailbone, are all in contact with the wall. So those 3 points, head, ribs, and hips, essentially. And then you can kind of feel, okay, what does it take to keep my ribs on the wall and my head on the wall? And then to hold all of that there as I then come to stand on my own 2 feet. And what you'll probably find as you do this, and I hope as people are listening, if they're not driving, of course, that they can also try this, is that your set position and where you tend to hang out is not that. And so being aware of that. So when you are standing at your desk, or often, like for me, even being the body nerd that I am, when I'm washing dishes, like you just lean against the sink and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like no fun. And so when you're like, oh, my back hurts and I'm standing here, well, how am I standing? Do I need to put a soft bend in my knees? Is my head stacked over my shoulders? Are my shoulders right over my ribs and my ribs over my hips? Like all of those little points, if you can check in with that and bring yourself back to that more frequently, that's a big piece of it. And then the second part of that, I would say, is to learn how to do a hip hinge. So a hip hinge if you are familiar at all with strength training or weightlifting, is basically the position of a deadlift. So this is bending over just from your hips, not your back, to pick something up off the ground. Think of how many times a day we bend over. Again, like the kitchen, loading, unloading the dishwasher, or in the bathroom, brushing your teeth, right? And you bend over to, spit. If you are always bending over from your lower back, that puts a lot of pressure and strain on your lower back. That it also, if it's already in a state of irritation and discomfort, it's just like, it's not helpful. And so if you can learn to move from your hips and allow your glutes and your hamstrings to do the work, that lets them do it and not the smaller muscles of your lower back. So fix your posture and learn how to hip hinge, and that'll make a big difference in how your lower back is feeling.
Okay. And how often do you recommend doing the posture against the wall? Is that something we should kind of do once a day, repeatedly check in through the day? Because I know it's like you do it and then it goes away. It's kind of like getting that muscle memory. Sometimes even like breath work, I'll have people like, you need to practice your breath work in order to be able to bring it back in when you need it. Is there sort of a pattern that you recommend of how often?
Yeah, exactly. It's practice. It's habit. It's learning how to bring yourself back to your stacked position, and also having the awareness when you're not in that stacked position. So yeah, like how I like to work with clients too is to have like your own kind of like mobility wellness plan. I call it an Amplify You plan, because I want it to really amplify all of the things that you want to do. So if your goal is like, I want to do a push-up, awesome. This plan is going to reflect that. So within that plan, right, once a day, you're doing some mobilization. So that's the self-massage that we're talking about with the therapy balls, and then some activations. And I bring that up because for many people, if your posture has been slouchy for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, me telling you to stand up straight, it doesn't just like work like that. Mm-hmm. You may feel, oh man, there's a lot of restriction through the front of my shoulders that's preventing me from doing that. Or maybe my quads and the top of my thighs are really tight. And so I can't get into that stacked shape because literally my tissues won't go there. And that's where the therapy balls come into play. So I would say you could do it every day as a part of your plan with a therapy ball kind of roll out to help you figure out or to help reduce tension. And then that activation would be enough to just keep reminding your brain, exactly like you're saying. We do it enough repetitions, and then that becomes the new normal.
Okay. So you start with the therapy balls. That's the place that you start for the self-massage.
Yeah.
And we can link I'll make sure I get the therapy balls that you recommend so that we can link them in the show notes so people know where to get them. So let's say we have our therapy balls and that we've gotten them, we're ready to start. How do you recommend starting the self-massage?
Yeah. So it's going to depend. It's going to depend on your body and your tension and how you carry yourself throughout the day, how you're standing. Of course, if you typically stand with all of your weight off to one side, that's going to affect the tension. So we talked about the posture check-in, leaning into the wall. Where do you feel the most resistance when you do that? And I'd say start there. For many people, that's going to be the front of the shoulders and into your pecs. Or it may be in your thighs, in your quads from sitting and the adaptations that our bodies have made from the positions we're in the most often. So it depends. That would be like the other thing I say all the time. But it also, I want to add, it's not always where you think it will be. So if your back hurts, you might be thinking, well, great, let me just roll my back out all the time. And maybe you have been doing that with foam rollers or whatever. And if you're not feeling any change, all the things that we're talking about right now about posture and position and the tension that may be contributing to that may also be what's contributing to your lower back discomfort and pain.
Okay. So you might not be looking at the place you're having the pain, but the place you're feeling the resistance in order to break that up so that you can get more mobility for the place that you need to for the pain.
Yes.
And then with your resistance balls, you're holding them and you're actually rubbing, so I would assume if you're working on your back, you're laying on them to create pressure. Is that correct?
Yeah, It depends. I'll also share with you my bodywork starter guide, which is like how to
Okay.
get started with therapy balls, the 6 places to roll. So with video,
Perfect.
so that everyone can see how that goes. You can do like for the front of the shoulders, for example. I really like to
Hmm.
do it also against the wall. It just
Okay.
feels better than laying on the ground. So you can put,
Hmm.
you know, lean into a wall with a ball at the front of your shoulder and then allow your breath to help relax into this area. You can add movement of the arm around. So that would be one way to move. Or if you wanted to do the backs of the shoulders, you could again do that at the wall, which is another great starting place, especially for people for their first times, because things can be irritated. You
Hmm.
know, if ever you've had a massage and they're digging into your upper back, you're like, ah, right? I would say start at the wall. That'd be a great place to
Okay.
start. And then you can graduate down onto the floor and use body weight and gravity and really relax into it that way. So there's some that we do standing, some that we do laying on the floor, some that we do leaning into the wall. It just depends on how it feels. So again, we want it to hurt so good, not just be painful. I
Okay.
believe that no pain, no gain is nonsense. So it shouldn't just hurt. So yeah, it depends on how it feels and what the best way to really use gravity to allow yourself to relax into it is.
And that,
And then
oh,
there's some too that you use your hands.
sorry, so that you made a good point, and that was something I wanted to ask because you were, it's sometimes hard to know where the no pain, no gain, where like, because it does, if you're using that therapy ball often, it will be painful. So do you have any recommendation on how to know, like, okay, good enough, but not where you're getting into like, oh, that's too painful? I think that can be kind of confusing of like how far you
Hmm.
should push.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, there's so many messages in the fitness world about like more is better. And it's like,
Hmm.
oh, no, actually, better is better. But actually, you can use your breath really as your guide. And so if you are in any position and you can't take a deep breath, or have a conversation, then that's your nervous system letting you know it's too deep, even if it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes it does, it feels like it's too much. Other times it doesn't, but that's a easy kind of like a hack into what your nervous system and the signals that it is giving you.
That's, yeah, good. Thank you. Because I think that can be just a hard balance for for a lot of
Hmm.
people to know. Even when you're getting a massage, like, okay, do we
Hmm.
want it painful? Sometimes it hurts, and then you're like, I think this is working my muscles out, and I want it to be, but now actually I'm in pain, and I'm not sure whether this is good. So that's a good tip for people to be able to use because knowing kind of how far to go. And then the other thing is, so when we're starting, how many times a day do you recommend doing it every day? Should we take a break after a while, like to let rest, or how often do you recommend getting started?
Yeah, I would recommend at least 3 times a week to get started.
Okay.
You may find that there, especially at the beginning, that there's some areas where you're like, if I miss a day, I just really, really feel the change, or like the after effects of not doing it. But I also like doing it every single day. Like people have lives, you
Mhm,
know?
yeah.
And also if you tend towards that all or nothing mentality, if you skip a day, then you're like, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Like I'm not going to do it because like I fell off the wagon.
Mhm.
So 3 times a week is definitely enough. And that's also why I want to make it as simple as possible of, roll the one thing, right? That one place you're feeling that restriction, and then do that one exercise that's going to help you to rebuild awareness and some strength. Even if it seems as simple as the posture check in, that counts and that matters because the rest of your day, you're now thinking about what it is to be in your best posture.
Yes, I know. I think once you're aware of it, it's, I think even like when sometimes when we're working out, we'll eat better because we're making the effort to work out. So like once you're checking the posture, you're in that like, okay, I
Hmm.
have to keep my posture straight. So it's just keeping that repetition. Now, beyond the therapy balls, are there any other tools that you would like to recommend?
Oh, so many tools. Like I mean, even in this room right now, I got a bag full of therapy balls. There's like a massage gun on this chair. There's just like stuff everywhere. But actually, what I like about the therapy balls too, and again, they're about the size of a tennis ball. And they come in like a mesh tote. You can use them in the tote. You can use them out of the tote. And of all of the tools I have tried, there's a lot of like, this is good for this one thing, right? And this is good for
Okay.
this one thing. And so a more versatile tool that'll allow you to do different massage techniques and different strokes and like use it on different parts of your body. To me, that's a better use of time and resources. And so I like, even with all the toys that I have, I always go back to my therapy balls like every single time.
Okay, that would be the number one thing that you think start there. That's a good place to start. Okay. And what about people with headaches? Where would you start for people that are getting regular headaches?
Yeah. So I actually used to get tension headaches all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know firsthand how, I mean, it's just excruciating too to have pain in your head, just like full stop. It sucks. And actually, what I found with, I was using therapy balls to help kind of navigate my way out of that, especially for massage in and around my neck. It was almost too much because the tension of my neck and shoulders, and for me, it was coming from jaw dysfunction and, TMJ and clenching and all of that. And so the tension was actually protective in a way. Right? The tension was helping to create stability in my head and neck where my own muscles didn't know how to. And that also happens like in the lower back. This happens anytime we have, dysfunction or pain. It's often there's no stability happening. So our body goes, no problem. I'll just get really super tight and all of the muscles and the fascias get very tight. And then you're like, well, this thing is really tight. Maybe I should stretch it. But if you don't have the kind of like body knowledge of how to create that stability, it just kind of puts you back into the cycle. So when it came to headaches, I would roll out my neck and then get a rebound tension headache that was like even worse than the one I had before. And I was like, what is going on? So when I'm talking about, going elsewhere,
okay,
because the focal point where you have the pain is so uncomfortable, like 100% with headaches, it's absolutely that. So I found I couldn't roll out my neck, but I could roll out my shoulders and I could roll out my upper back. And I could then work on improving my positioning and my posture, which took some of the tension out of the, upper trapezius and some of the, neck stabilizers that were so tight to begin with. So it wasn't, I wish I could say like, do this one thing and then it's gone forever. And it wasn't that. It was a bunch of different things. It was learning like jaw massage also that you can do for yourself. There's one, like you can do this in the shower. This does not feel good, but it does feel good, which is to use your thumb inside of your mouth to massage the pterygoids in the back of the mouth. So, if you imagine where your molars are and you just, and I say in the shower because you're going to drool and then your hands are already clean before you stick them in your mouth. So if I'm going to massage the left side of my jaw, I like to use my right hand so that my fingers are on the outside of the mouth, and then just use your thumb in the back of your jaw to massage those tissues there. And you can feel the difference between bone because bone is very hard and then your muscles are going to be really grouchy. But different things like that, right? What are all the ways I can get into head and neck position and tension that isn't rolling directly on the back of my neck? Because I found that to be just like way too intense when I was in the throes of it.
Okay. And what about like even massaging the scalp? Do you ever get into that? Because I feel like that's something in some ways that's ignored, and you can have a lot of scalp tension, but even when we get massages, we're not really getting scalp massages. I've always found that interesting.
Oh my gosh. I mean, 100% yes. I have curly hair, so I try to like not to touch my hair ever. And I don't want to like mess up my wash day.
Yes.
So I haven't done a lot of scalp massage, but absolutely, because the fascias don't just end at the hairline. They do continue. And also, I can't think of the exact name for it, but the fascia that comes around the back of the head into the front of your forehead, like absolutely, it's continuous. And absolutely, that would be helpful, but it's not something that I personally have.
Yeah, no, you don't have to show us, but I feel like I have, you think that though, because we focus so much on certain areas. And then I have, sometimes like, it's like, okay, but there's other areas that can be affected too, that we're not necessarily always focusing on, which can be interesting. So another thing to switch gears a little bit is I work with a lot of people on hormone imbalance and endometriosis. And I have been reading a lot of studies and hearing about pelvic massage for treating helping with that pain, helping with hormones and particularly endometriosis. So do you have any recommendations for any pelvic massages for anybody that is having sort of like hormonal imbalances or something in that realm?
Yeah, well, with abdominal massage, I know we spent a lot of time talking about the tennis ball sized therapy balls. I also have another one I like to use that's about the size of a playground ball that's filled with air. So it's soft and squishy, which feels a lot better on your abdomen and even like your rib cage than a harder ball would. And so I'll use that to do abdominal massage because you can, take some air out of the ball if it feels too intense. And this is also really great too for back pain, circling back to that. Again, we're talking about, the muscles may be tight because they're not sure how to create stability. And with the back pain, it doesn't just exist on the back. So using an air-filled ball to massage at the front of your pelvis, the front of your abdomen can help with both of those things.
Okay, that's great. So we can link that too. So it's a softer ball so that you're not getting that intensity of the pain.
Yeah. And I mean, again, full disclosure, I'm looking at it. It's on my desk. I'm like, hi, friend. Just because it's air filled doesn't mean that it's not quite as intense. It's just softer, especially when we're rolling on organs and, guts and stuff. In the strength and conditioning world, I remember this was like years ago, but someone was like using a kettlebell to get into their psoas, which is a deep hip flexor. And so they had the kettlebell on a countertop and they were like laying over it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like why? Why does it need to be this extreme, this intense? Because with an air-filled ball, I get to be in the driver's seat. I get to breathe and relax into it. I'm not just trying to shove a hard piece of metal, like literally into my ovaries and hoping for the best. Yes. The other thing too, I want to add about the abdominal massage is we can really tap into the physiological piece of relaxation. So anytime you're rolling on therapy balls and you're getting touch, it helps to stimulate nerve endings within your connective tissue that help to move you out of that fight or flight and more into that down regulation in that parasympathetic nervous system. So this like, if the scalp massage, right? And then right away we're like, oh, you just like melt and you can relax and maybe you get sleepy. It's that same response. And then with the abdominal massage, it's like even more intense because you're breathing deeply. So we're getting that diaphragmatic relaxation. And then also the touch of the therapy ball. So in addition to the massage, you're getting more relaxation, and anything we can do to like reduce stress, even if it's like just for that time being, but to kind of reset our set point for our homeostasis, it's so super helpful.
Well, that's, I'm always talking about ways to reduce stress. So if you can be doing self-massage and stress reduction in the same time, it's even better, right? Because you get to, because I know like that's sometimes people are like, okay, I don't have enough time. And we're always trying to figure out ways in order to really bring your body back in the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is a great combination of like, okay, you are doing something that's doing that, and you're also being able to do some relaxation at the same time. Yes. Well, I love all of these things. Do you have anything else that was valuable just to share? Because there's been so many great tips. Anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think, we talked about it a little bit too of like all or nothing. I think that mentality is so easy to get sucked into. And then you're like, well, there's too many things to do and I don't have time to do any of them. And I think if you just take like one thing, and know also like this isn't the end of the road, right? You're not this one and done, but like just one thing to start with now and to incorporate into your routine, whatever that might be. And then let that get really easy, right? So you don't have to think about it. It just happens. And then you can add on another thing, instead of, let me look at the 9,000 different things for stress reduction I could do, and then getting stressed out that you're not doing them. And then they're not serving any purpose whatsoever. So I think there's definitely, and I say this too as like an overachiever perfectionist. It's been a long road to get here, but there is value in just starting with the one thing and then building off of that and not having to be perfect right out of the gate.
That's great. Yes. No, I hear you. It's hard to not, you're in the new thing. It's like, okay, I'm trying this. And then you can get discouraged because you can't get it done, or it's not, or you're not seeing success. And that's another thing, giving it time to actually see the difference. I think sometimes we can try things that are like, oh, I tried this and it didn't work because it didn't work right away. But sometimes if you just keep at it, you do it slowly, you play the long game where you're actually just kind of committing and keep coming back. You can start after time. Our body takes a long time you're saying like you might be in this posture for 40, 50 years or, longer even. And now we're working on resetting it, which can be done by just being patient with your body too, and how long it takes.
Mm-hmm. It would be
Yes.
great if it, just wave my magic wand and everything changed. But like,
Yes.
that's not how we got here in the first place.
No,
So
yes.
not going to get me out of it.
Yeah. So we're starting with the posture check-ins to see how your posture is set up. The other thing is, real quick, do you have any recommendations besides the posture check-in, like when you're sitting at your desk or when you have your phone of shifting position to help? Is there anything there that could be helpful for people? Because I mean, we just are in these postures a lot of the day.
Yeah. Anything you can do to get your monitor at eye height, even if it's like with your phone as well. There's a lot of desk add-ons you can add now to bring your monitor up, even if you're using a laptop, that I think are really, really great. With my phone, I try to get my phone in front of my face as well versus staring at it down into my lap. So if that means like a pillow or two on my lap to hold my arms up, I'll do that. I also will, as a time restriction as well, will drop down into a squat because then I can rest my elbows on my knees. And then at some point my legs fall asleep and I have to get out and then I'm like, oh, time to get off TikTok.
Yes.
So that helps too.
Yes.
But yeah, use tools, use pillows, use blocks, whatever, to get your screens at eye height so that you're not staring down or leaning into something as you're using it. And that'll take some thinking to do, but it's really helpful.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all the great tips. Where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet, but mostly on my website, aewellness.com. And you can find me on TikTok at aewellness and on Instagram at Hala for Mala. Also on my podcast, I can't believe I forgot to mention that, The Body Nerd Show, where I'm excited to have a conversation with you too. So yeah, thank you so much too for having me today to chat about all the things I love to get nerdy about. It's been super, super awesome.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.